Mr. Schrader.
Here.
Mrs. Schatzinger.
Here.
Mr. Hanson.
Here.
Mr. Gallus.
Here.
Mrs. King.
Here.
Mr. Gotsky.
Here.
Mr. Wirch.
Here.
Mr. Split.
Here.
We have a quorum.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I am Reverend Jeffrey Dodson. Please be with me in prayer this evening. I begin tonight by asking that we observe a moment of silence on the anniversary of the 20th anniversary of September 11th. Let us observe a moment of silence. Gracious God, we observe in this silence the names and the memories of those who have lost their lives serving and protecting this country. We ask that we be reminded of what a privilege it is to live in such a place as the United States of America. We pray that you might guide us as we safeguard those who are vulnerable within our communities, as we go about serving all members of this community with equality, and as we seek to build this community up in strength and in love. Help us to go about the good work of serving this community with your wisdom and with your strength and with your peace. We pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. All right. Start tonight. Is there an approval for tonight's agenda?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Howard, seconded by Page. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Is there any public comment tonight? No public comment. All right, next item is accepting the informal reports from standing committees and staff. Is there a motion to approve as published?
So moved. Second.
Moved by David, seconded by John Split. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the informal reports, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those are approved. Moving on to the consent calendar, only one item on there. Is there a motion to approve that?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Al, seconded by Page. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent calendar is approved. Moving right into the action items. First item on the agenda for tonight is masking in city halls and city buildings. This we just had sample policies for in the packet, correct?
So yeah, there wasn't really a sample policy regarding that specifically. There was a portion of it in the example from Columbus. Was
Yes. Yeah. So basically what we're looking at here is requiring face masks in City Hall and other city buildings for everyone, including public and employees, until further notice. This is strictly due to the rapidly increasing count of cases in not only the county, but in Ripon and further out than that. I gave everyone there a copy of the current roughly 13-month graph for Ripon's COVID count. I'll try to pull it up on the computer so people in the audience can see. There we go. So you can see our current climb started in middle of July, whereas last year that started in the middle of August. So we're 3 weeks to a month ahead of what we were doing last year, and the curve is actually steeper than last year as well. And if we keep trending in this direction, we will certainly surpass what we did for numbers last year, and we need to try to head that off. And this the bare minimum of what we can do as a city to do so. There would be the standard medical exclusions for wearing face masks, and if you look at the Baraboo policy that was in for the future discussion item for vaccinations, they do have a section on face masking in their policy that does lay out the medical exclusion quite nicely, very well worded. So if you have a chance to take a look at that, I recommend using similar language for this masking policy. Any discussion? John?
Can you remind me what it is for city employees? The mask is a mandate now, or?
So this wouldn't necessarily, I mean, it would kind of incorporate what we're already doing. The current policy, that was COVID policy for the city with masking, is employees, whether or not they're vaccinated within 6 feet of each other, you can't necessarily ask if they're vaccinated, you have to wear a mask. So really, it's always wearing a mask. So staff meetings, things of that nature, unless you are more than 6 feet apart and both are vaccinated, you don't technically have to wear a mask, but generally speaking, in those close quarters, we are, be wearing masks, so.
So we are doing nothing but reverting back to literally where we were when we started, correct?
I wasn't
We
here.
did- Well, but no, what I meant is we had a policy, did we not relax the policy a little bit? And now we're gonna go back to,
The stricter policy.
the more strict version, which I know personally many companies in our city and in our county are doing. So it doesn't seem like a big to do. With that, I would recommend approving, moving back to masks indoors and for anyone in public, in city buildings.
And I second it.
Any further discussion?
So
Does that mean then, like the city staff at the office, they have to wear it all 8 hours at work?
I don't think that would be the case. I think this is, our policy, this would be more of a public-facing policy, like, at the same time, the existing COVID policy from the city would, if I'm in my office by myself, I don't have to wear a mask. Similar to Ann, or if Mike's in his office behind, he doesn't have to wear a mask. As soon as somebody comes in, yes, you gotta wear a mask. So there's already, with the existing employee COVID policy, there's guidelines for that situation. This, I think, generally speaking, would be requiring masks for individuals outside of our organization coming in to wear masks with the exemptions of anybody under 2, with somebody that may be incapacitated, or somebody with a medical condition that would require them not to, or a disability that would require them not to have to wear a mask. So if somebody's deaf, something like that, you wouldn't have to wear a mask. That is kind of what we're getting at here, because the city policy already basically hits this. This would be more of a public-facing policy for city facilities. So
I would suggest as we go forward, and I think Al is indicating that essentially this is his motion, take a look at face coverings adopted by the city of Columbus, read through those quickly. They can be modified, obviously, to fit the city of Ripon. And then I think you could probably add to F, which is face coverings may be removed when eating, drinking, communicating with someone who is deaf or hard of hearing, and when communication cannot be achieved through other means to confirm identity if requested, or if in an enclosed space where no other person is present, which is clearly consistent with our current COVID policy. And then I would suggest, if the council is willing, to any individuals 6 feet apart in a closed space if they have been vaccinated. I would add that if the council is so inclined, but I think the words of the face covering is there. So please look at that. I think that's essentially what is being discussed and debated. If there's something that shouldn't be in there, let's go for it. But I think if we be specific, we know what we're talking about, and then we just move forward with that applying to everybody that enters the public building, whether they're an employee or whether they're a visitor. So take a quick look at that, because I think that works. And I don't care if you move with that other language, I just thought there are some circumstances where in a staff meeting, if you're both vaccinated and you're trying to dialogue for an extended period of time and you're 6 feet apart, you shouldn't have somebody peeking in the window.
So we're doing 1A through I. This is
Correct.
With
That
the
would be
city of,
what I would-
with the
that's
city
what
of
I would
Ripon.
urge everybody to look at. Now, if you want to eliminate I, but you know, there is an opportunity for someone who objects to wearing a mask, not required, right? Is that a
My
remote
recommendation,
attendance? So you got remote
my
attendance.
recommendation is to use the wording from the Columbus policy on face masks.
Yeah. So it's clear what's being moved, if that's okay with the mover.
So, without a draft of a policy to approve, we're approving it in concept?
No, that's why I want you to look at it, Cal, because it.
And we did, or
Okay.
have, or
Yeah,
are.
essentially, and it's essentially what you molded.
Right.
I just didn't want somebody coming back later and saying, where are the specific words for exemption? Where are the specific words for closed meeting, where you're alone in your office kind of thing? I think Columbus covers it all, and I talks about whether you show up at a meeting, under current policy, you wear a mask, or if you don't want to wear the mask, then you can request to appear remotely. And you've got the physical and mental health conditions and disability and held religious beliefs. Those are all addressed in this policy, so I think it's straightforward.
What is the library considered?
Public building.
Public building. It would fall under this policy.
Oh, we don't want to build.
And they currently are at this level or higher already.
What about pavilions in the park?
I would not class because they're open. I don't think there's anything where you can completely close out. I'm not aware of any building that completely lock it and close it.
Upper Murray, you can close.
Completely?
Yep.
Door?
They have the overhead garage doors that come down.
Okay. Then what are you doing there? Oh, you go in there and?
If the winds
Yes, I've not
are
been
bad
there.
up there and it's raining,
I'm familiar with that.
you close.
Oh, I know, there's no place that you
Yeah.
can close the door.
But I would say in that situation, it's an outdoor facility.
I think you can add that in here. That all park pavilions and related shelters are considered outdoor facilities. That would probably be a good clarification, especially if there's one that can be closed.
Right.
Be a friendly amendment, Al?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I would agree.
Okay.
A question to Mike probably then, according to this policy then, somebody laying on the floor working on a truck in the shop would be required to be wearing a face mask while they're on the floor by themselves, possibly inside that building, working on a truck or something, or welding or anything like that.
That could be very dangerous, if you're welding, doing grinding, any of those tasks, could be a problem.
Well, there's common sense involved. too.
Exactly. Gotta come to the point where common sense has to come in.
Sometimes we get short.
Getting to the point where I said you put the exemption regarding vaccination. If you have vaccination, you'd be in that position and you're not exposing anybody. Go ahead and weld away.
Or if they're grinding or welding, just have them hold a bottle of water.
It's a safety issue.
Yeah, right, it's a safety issue, correct.
But according to this, they have to, or they're
Right.
violating the policy. So again, the more.
Unless you're
the more
eating or drinking.
inclusive you are, the more chance you have of causing an issue, in my opinion.
Yep.
We've gone over this before in previous discussions. I do have some fears over that, over the individuals. Also, so according to this, if they were driving down the street in the truck, two of your workers, they must be masked, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And if they're not, then there's possibly Part G, subject to discipline up to including termination. Do we specifically spell out the discipline that would be occurred? You're accepting a policy that says discipline. What is the discipline?
Obviously, you're hoping that you're going to get voluntary compliance. That's the whole point. I don't
You
think
can hope in one hand, love.
But you obviously aren't going to, if you adopt a policy and you don't say there's anything to it, then they ignore it.
Correct. Just like any of our policies, any of our, I mean, is this a resolution? Is this a policy? Is this a recommendation? You know, to
And
me.
it does say may, it doesn't say shall. So may leaves open whether or not you're going to proceed. Obviously, we're dealing with an uncertain time in terms of the future. It's just suggesting that we take and I certainly, on this whole safety issue, you certainly could include that where you allow people to take them off. Face covering may be removed when eating, drinking, communicating with someone who's deaf, hard of hearing, communication confirmed, or in an enclosed space where no other person is present, or where safety requirements safety requirements demand removal or call for.
Dictate
How about
removal.
call for the removal of the mask. So we can use common sense. I would add that clause. Is that good with the mover? For safety measures, call for the removal of the mask. Is that acceptable then?
Any further discussion?
Is it also, am I missing it, or did it address the protective services? It already was addressed, I believe, by CDC, police, fire, EMS, where they don't have to wear it. Is it in here somewhere and I'm just not seeing it?
I don't know what you reference the ADC exempt.
Isn't it protective services, isn't there, that they don't have to wear a mask? If I'm mistaken, I apologize, but I thought protective services was different than that.
This wouldn't apply to fire. That would be the only,
City doesn't own the fire building?
No,
It's owned by the
the district.
district.
All
Which is
firefighters are
76% us, so
Right.
technically we own the fire department building as well.
Right. We don't if it's owned by, I think it's titled the fire district.
So just like anything, if there's an issue specifically that comes up that we're not thinking of right now, that department head could bring that forward at a future council meeting, correct? And alert, before that even, alert our city administrator and I mean, if there are issues that we're not thinking of, there are ways that in the future we could revisit this, correct?
That would fall under safety, anyway, most of this would fall
Right.
under a safety that we're putting in there.
I guess my point is by saying that, I think a lot of this seems like common courtesy and also common, use common sense when we're thinking about this. And if there are issues, this can still be an ongoing discussion. It seems pretty straightforward though, what we have here.
And as with everything else due to COVID, it will be an ongoing discussion. Is there any further, Al?
Listen, if there's something that comes up in a particular department, should I wear a mask, should I not wear a mask? They need to talk to their supervisor. Supervisor can confer with the CEO the city, all of those things. That stuff doesn't need to continually, month after month, meeting after meeting after meeting, come back to this council. We hire people to do their jobs, so let them do their jobs. If it's a major policy shift, yeah, then we gotta look at it. But if, you know, we could be doing this every meeting from now till next April, if we wanted to discuss this and that about the policy. Use your head, let the people do their work. If we need major adjustments, we'll make them.
Any further discussion? One last time, is there any further discussion?
Just read that clause. Was that acceptable, Al, my clause at the end?
Yes.
For safety concerns, call for the removal of the mask.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I agree to that as the second.
Just so it's clear what we're.
Jim?
It says your request was made to consider a masking policy, yet we weren't given one tonight, technically.
What's that?
We weren't giving a draft, like you mentioned earlier. We were given some drafts from other cities. To be honest, I felt disappointed we didn't have a draft in line with our policy that we currently have, our COVID policy. It would have been nice to have that. I think it could have helped a lot of the issues that we came up today already with questions tonight, that we could have asked those questions as well. Because then we had a specific policy in mind. Without having something specific, and we're just saying, yeah, we're approving something, honestly, that's disappointing to our citizens personally.
Obviously a controversial issue, and
Oh, I agree.
Columbus is in here, and I think the words are pretty clear. Certainly we can take time to review it and reread it, but
Columbus wasn't in here for the mask, and Columbus was in here for the vaccination part of it.
no, I understand, and I'm not suggesting, I didn't set the agenda, just saying the language struck me as similar to what Al was saying. Here it is in black and white. If anybody wants to wrestle or quarrel with any of those words, let's do it. I think it's pretty straightforward.
One other question.
Yeah.
To be clear, this is replacing the other policy we now have in effect.
It will apply across the board, correct? So whatever that other one that we watered down,
Is now,
this will apply to everybody who enters the building, employees included. So that's why I picked up on it, because Al said, use what we got to move forward. It's pretty much what we have, and this is it. And it gives the exemption, so it's clear to the world that we're not going to use common sense regarding the masking requirement.
This pertain to union employees?
Everybody's in the building.
Okay.
So the union can grieve it, certainly, we understand that. But this applies to all employees in the building.
And public.
And public, most importantly, we wanted to make sure we weren't leaving ourselves open to public, exposing our employees.
One last time, any further discussion? Jolene?
I don't think I need to request this because our city staff are just phenomenal and are already probably thinking about this when they look back at the notes as to what was approved. But I would just ask that a signage be placed perhaps on the door of City Hall to alert people.
Yep, we will do that.
Any further discussion? Do we need roll call for this one, or just?
Roll call.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Schrader,
Aye.
Mrs. Schatzinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hanson,
Aye.
Mr. Gallows,
yes,
Mrs. Kane,
Yes.
Mr. Gotsky,
Yes.
Mr. Wirtz,
Yes.
Mr. Split.
No.
Passes 7-1.
Very good. All right, moving on to a resolution to authorize interim financing for water and sewer construction project on Vermont and Parkway, Paris. Adam?
So there's a resolution here. This is just interim gap financing for the current project that's ongoing. As we have bills coming in, instead of pulling funds from existing accounts, we draw on this. It's kind of just like a construction loan, and at the end of everything, it'll be refunded with Safe Drinking Water and Clean Water Fund loans. I was told that this was all set up, but it really wasn't, so that's why it's here. And, you know, so probably later this month, there'll be another bill that comes from James Peterson and Sons for the project. That's gonna be totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars. So then we'll begin drawing on this. The interest here is also eligible for the other funding and to be you know, put into that loan. But it's just basically a construction loan to get us by, so we're not just taking money out of the coffers to pay for a project that funding isn't coming for until June of next year. So,
Move to approve the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Al, seconded by Howard. Discussion.
I do have one question on the top. It doesn't really, it just says it's to finance infrastructure improvement for street and sewer repairs. It's quite generic. I mean, this is strictly for the Vermont Parkway project, right?
yeah, this is strictly for, that is, they just generally put it in terms, yeah, that's the only project, we've already approved the contract, it's the only project we're doing, so.
Shouldn't at the first it be a little more specific instead of so general?
Certainly, I think you could include that amendment, and it'd be specific to the project.
Would you like to make that amendment?
I would, yes.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second it.
So amendment is made by David, seconded by John Gatsky. Does anyone have any discussion on being specific about this project for this loan?
To finance infrastructure improvements for street and water repairs at whatever the locations are.
Vermont Parkway Terrace Project.
Good catch, Dave.
Was there an original motion to approve it?
Yes.
By who?
Me. I accept the amendment.
They can't amend something that hasn't been
Right,
approved.
that'd be it.
You know,
What's that?
The
No,
motion
the
has been
mover
made.
and the seconder can accept a friendly amendment to amend.
that
The
has-
seconder is accepted.
I accept.
I accept.
Any discussion on the amended proposal? Hearing none, we have a roll call vote again.
Mr. Schreier,
Here?
Mrs. Schatzinger,
Yes?
Mr. Hanson,
Yes.
Mr. Gallops,
Yes,
Mrs. Kane,
Yes.
Mr. Gottsy,
making me do that.
Mr. Wirch,
Yes.
Mr. Split.
Yes.
Passes 8-0.
Okay, that's pretty unanimously. Next item is, let's see here. We have a budget and finance director ordinance. Adam?
Simple change, ahead of trying to hire this position. As it's been specified in the ordinance, the only thing we are changing is removing a section regarding removal. So it used to say that there would be a required 2/3 majority removal for this position by the common council. That would just be eliminated. This position would be confirmed by the common council after the search, and then, removed like any other employee. It just makes it less complicated in the event something happens. So clean it up now before we place the person.
What is the policy right now for removal?
2/3. by the common
No,
council.
I'm sorry. What is it going to? What is
Oh,
this?
it'd be just a at-will employee, basically, be terminated by department head, or, you know, if it gets really ugly, yeah, common council, but it would be,
Common council still can eliminate.
yeah, I mean, you can,
You can eliminate the
Yeah.
position, but
Yeah.
not the person.
yeah, so it'll just be a general situation
So
where,
let me read the clause one more time. I don't know if we have the two drafts or anything. The last clause that's being removed, the budget and finance director shall serve at the pleasure of the council, subject to the requirements of Wisconsin statute 1712, which shall require a 3/4 vote of the council for removal of the budget and finance director.
sorry, 3/4.
Why it was adopted in 1996, I don't know. Yes, I was around, but I don't remember. But it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit with the position. You have your chief executive officer that is be given the authority to hire with council approval. And then obviously removal is by that chief executive officer, is how the structure of the city is currently set up. There's nobody else, other than the chief of police, does not have control of the city administrator. And the city attorney, I guess. Now that I think about it, you can't do anything about it.
I'll make a motion to approve the change in ordinance.
Been moved by David, second by Paige. Any discussion? One more time, is there any discussion on this ordinance? Hearing none, I'll do another roll call vote, please.
Keep putting it away. Mr. Schrader,
Aye.
Mrs. Schatzinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hanson,
Aye.
Mr. Gallops,
Yes,
Mrs. Kane,
Yes.
Mr. Gotsky,
Yes.
Mr. Wirch,
Yes.
Mr. Split,
Yes.
passes 8-0.
That is approved unanimously. Moving on to an alarm system ordinance. Is this a revision of an ordinance or a whole new ordinance?
Ask Bill.
It is.
Yes.
It is a revision of a existing
Would you like
ordinance.
to
Chief will explain.
go over what's changing?
Sure, it is a revision of a current ordinance. With the transfer of dispatch, we're forced to evaluate some of these things, and this is an ordinance that existed. Some of the language that existed in it was things like the police chief shall maintain a alarm receiving location in dispatch. Obviously, that's all been transferred. We don't want to be in that business of monitoring alarms anymore for private businesses, so this solves that problem for us, and with the transfer, it needs to just clean up that ordinance a little bit.
And for the most part, it had phased its way out in.
Yeah, we were only,
We were not-
monitoring a couple, and then when the discussion started about dispatch transfer, we reached out to them and said, hey, you might want to take a look at this, and then they reached out to private companies. So the majority of businesses have a alarm system monitoring company that they deal with, and then they contact dispatch directly, rather than that alarm. What used to happen was we had various places in town where the alarm actually would come directly to us. And we've been phasing that out over the last probably 10, 15 years, but we had a couple that were lingering that we've solved, and this just cleans up that ordinance.
Any questions?
So I hear you're saying that we, 100% of our local businesses, companies that you know of, have their alarm system figured out as to who is monitoring it, and if we were to adopt this, accept this tonight, we would not be leaving anyone without someone monitoring their alarm system. It sounds like it's, as you said, the ones that you were monitoring, you have figured out solutions. So just to
Yep.
clarify that, 100%
Yes.
of them.
Yes.
Thank you.
Section 41680 about police response to fire alarms.
Mhm.
Is that in addition to fire district policy?
I'm not sure what their fire district policy
Fire
is.
district policy is where we would charge for a fire alarm for the false alarms, and as well, you are now going to be charging as well for the police response to that?
We've always charged for false alarms, whether that's, you know, for, if it's ongoing. I don't recall specifically a charge for a fire alarm ever with us. If the fire district is doing that, they may be doing that.
Correct.
Those, for us, tend to be,
Water flow alarms and such.
yeah, water flow, or not even that. That's typically a fire call. For us, it's more of business alarms going off. A business hangs up a new banner over during the daytime, and then at night they turn on their alarm system and the fan kicks on and sets the alarm off.
They just
And,
balloon up or whatever.
yeah, those type of things, that's what we're dealing with, so.
That's more for motion, this is specific to fire alarms,
Yep.
false fire alarm calls.
Yep.
So I think this would be,
But is
I'm
that,
okay with this, but I think Lud needs to get a hold of Attorney Moniz and maybe clean up the language between the two of them.
Okay, I can look at that. That's a good suggestion.
I'm okay with the way it is.
can I just see that real quick?
Sorry, Chief. It talks about the fire alarms. I thought that would clean up with the AFSCME.
Okay.
I will do that.
We can always take it off on our own. If need be.
So has anyone made a motion for this ordinance? I lost track.
No.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll motion to approve.
Motion by Paige, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Any discussion on this ordinance, alarm ordinance? Time, is there any discussion on the alarm system ordinance? Hearing none, we have a roll call vote again.
Oh, come on. Mr. Schrader. Mr. Schrader.
Yes.
Mr. Schatzinger.
Yes.
Mr. Hanson.
Aye.
Mr. Gallup.
Yes.
Mrs. Kane.
Yes.
Mr. Gatsby. Mr. Wirtz. Mr. Split.
Yes.
Passes 8-0.
All right, that's unanimous. Keep your sheet handy. Got one more. All right, next ordinance up for discussion is the grass clipping ordinance. Bill?
This is another attempt to just clean up some things for us. We've been getting numerous complaints in reference to this type of activity. In the past, it was always addressed under the littering ordinance, if you can picture that. I started to review that, had some concerns about the language and definition in that ordinance as far as enforcement. Reached out, had some conversations with Lud and with the city administrator, and felt that we should have something specific to this violation, not covered under the littering ordinance. Littering typically deals with solid waste definitions, those type of things. And we were, if we got challenged on a citation that we happened to issue for this offense, it could create a problem for us with enforcement. So this attempts to clean that up. I think just about every jurisdiction or every city our size probably has an ordinance like this. We're fortunate that we generally don't get to the point where we have to issue a citation, but if we did get to that point, we need to have this just cleaned up a little bit to address that. Obviously, we are all aware of the problems environmentally with discharging, especially for a community like us, discharging those long clippings into the roadway, into the sewers, problems with our wastewater, and then eventually into area streams and lakes. So this just gives us the opportunity to have the backing and the enforcement power if we ever do need to get to that. The other thing that it does allow us to do under this ordinance is it allows us to give them an opportunity to solve the problem. And that's generally what we're looking for, is for that cooperation. So if for example, you know, something happens and somebody discharges out onto the street and it's a problem, we can address it with them and hopefully get cooperation to address it. But if we have to go the enforcement route, this gives us the opportunity to do that with avoiding any type of legal challenge that we might face now, the way that the enforcement is done under the littering ordinance. I explained that pretty well, Lud.
You
Got
did.
any additions to that?
Nope, I think you nailed it. It certainly makes it cleaner for us to cite individuals who repeat, violate, putting grass clippings into the street area.
Okay.
Okay.
Why are the fines so high?
Get their attention.
Yeah, that's, that's, the issue. And just because somebody's issued a fine doesn't mean that that's where it's gonna stay.
Okay.
Generally what'll happen, that can be, worked on through the court process.
And this ordinance directly mirrors noxious weeds and tall grass. So it falls right in line with those, how we enforce it the same exact way. So that's the idea.
Most of the time when we're dealing with these types of complaints, we do get cooperation, we do get the person to voluntarily comply, so we don't have to get to this point, but.
Okay. I was just thinking with the fine so high, they'd maybe have a tendency to not even issue a ticket and keep doing repeated warnings where it would be a little.
No, we track that. We track warnings. Generally how we work things like that is the first time we'll have a verbal warning and say, hey, you can't do that. Maybe the next time it's a written warning and then citations after that,
Okay.
if it continues. Where we get to citations is when we have problem properties.
Okay.
We have a couple of those that we've dealt with tall grass and noxious weeds where we've had to do some enforcement. But for the majority of citizens, they're responsible and choose to do the right thing here. And again, this just cleans it up for if we do get to that point where if we do have to do enforcement, this is better than a littering citation, which could probably face a legal defense to that, as far as the definitions there.
Will your officers, if they see grass in the street, will they stop and contact the person, or do you need like a verbal complaint?
I think it's like everything else, it's discretionary up to the officer. If it's if it's not a major, I don't expect my officer's gonna be driving around every day looking for grass clippings in the street. I'm just being honest with you. But we had a situation in one of our neighborhoods where, there was swaths this wide all the way down the curb of filled. That's a definite, even me driving by with my old eyes, I could see the problem. So, but if, somebody happens to swing a lawnmower around and blows a little bit out of the street, that's not the purpose of the enforcement. It's not, there's some discretion there, there's some reasonableness, it's what's reasonable and how we're gonna do that. Obviously, if we get complaints, we're gonna respond to those complaints. But it's, it's certainly what's reasonable, I think. And for the most part, my officers are good at making that judgment call, and I trust them to do that.
I move to approve an ordinance creating Chapter 1019 in the Ripon Municipal Code of Ordinances as presented.
Second.
Moved by Paige, seconded by Dave. Any further?
It was moved by Joey.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Looking at you, but I said her. Apologize. Moved by Jolene, seconded by Dave. Any further discussion? Jim?
This is for Mike. Obviously, I know we mow a lot as well in the city. And we hold ourselves to a higher standard than we even ask our citizens. So we need to be the example, like we talk about in the winter with snow removal and things like that.
Most of our mowers are rear discharge, so that should minimize that.
Just to help alleviate some of the scuttlebutt for back of the city doesn't do this, the city doesn't do that, but you're asking the citizens to do it. So, you know what I mean?
I know.
Gotcha. So just hold ourselves in a higher standard. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Speaking of holding ourselves to a higher standard, I feel proud that our city leaders, our police chief, mentioned that this is not only something that he desires to help provide clarity to our current ordinances, but also looking at how it's good for the environment. And so with that said, I have a statement. I did consult with the executive director of the Green Lake Association, and I'd like to just read a statement so that we have, it's addressed to all of us, but I just got it today, which is why, it wasn't sent to all of us ahead of time. So, dear Mayor Grant and members of the Ripon City Council, this is again is presented by Stephanie Prowitz, the executive director of the Green Lake Association. I enthusiastically support your creation of Chapter 1019 in the Ripon Municipal Code of Ordinances as it relates to grass clippings, and I applaud the City Council for taking up this measure. When improperly used by its residents, Ripon's municipal storm drain system serves as a direct conduit of phosphorus pollution to Silver Creek and other smaller streams. Because Ripon is within the Green Lake watershed, this pollution makes its way from Silver Creek to Green Lake, where it promotes weed and algae growth, consumes oxygen, and harms its fishery. The Green Lake Association recently completed a lake study that found that we need a 50 to 70% reduction in phosphorus loading to achieve our water quality goals. We know that such significant phosphorus reduction goals will take the participation of everyone throughout the watershed doing their part to keep phosphorus on the land and out of our local waterways. The creation of Chapter 1019 to keep phosphorus loaded grass clippings from the street, where it eventually washes into storm sewers and into Green Lake, is a marked step toward our water quality goals. I strongly urge the City Council members to vote in approval of Chapter 1019. Thank you for your service to the residents of Ripon and for your willingness to incorporate common sense measures that are good for our community and for our natural resources. With gratitude, Stephanie Prowitz, Executive Director of the Green Lake Association.
Any other discussion? One last time, any further discussion on the grass clippings ordinance? Hearing none, have a roll call vote one more time.
Mr. Schrader.
Aye.
Mrs. Schatzinger.
Yes.
Mr. Hanson.
Aye.
Mr. Gallo.
Yes.
Ms. Kane.
Yes.
Mr. Gotsky.
Yes.
Mr. Wirt.
Yes.
Mr. Split.
May I ask why the gravitation to roll call votes for everything?
For these particular ordinances, the ordinance do request a vote count on the ordinance, that's all.
Thank you.
Versus motion and resolution.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our discussion items. First item is the capital improvement plan review.
All right, so I put a copy of the capital improvement plan for the next 5 years. As I state, it's a little bit probably more extensive than what has been done in the past for capital improvement planning for the city. We've worked with a format that kind of does this nice for us and breaks it out by department and by category and then also by fund. So you can see kind of what we will be using this for. The 2022 numbers will go into the 2022 budget. If it all fits, there will be reprioritization when that budget is completed to include these items in. As I stated, there have been some kind of changes to it, meaning, in the past, we wouldn't put an annual squad car replacement in the capital improvement plan because it was budgeted. It's still a capital purchase. It still needs to be documented. It still needs to be planned for. So we've worked hard as department heads and as administration here to kind of put this together as a bigger comprehensive view of what we're actually doing annually versus kind of in the past just cherry picking little things and putting it in here. So you can see broken down by ambulance, city administration, Department of Public Works, fire department, library, police department, road infrastructure, senior center, and then utility. So you can see there's a lot of different numbers there and different projects. And then by category, it's very similar. We break it down into everything from, just ambulance, building and grounds more specific, emergency management, fire department, library, parks and rec, police, public works, road maintenance, road reconstruction, roads and infrastructure, sewer department, utilities, water and sewer, which is combined, and then water department. Overall, We're looking at approximately $3.6 million worth of spend in 2022. That obviously seems high, but some of these things that we are doing are pretty significant. Like when you have a, $2 million project or, a $2 million senior center project in there, when you have a $500,000 fire truck in there, that's gonna jump that up dramatically. Doesn't mean that we're all going to get this in. Like I said, it doesn't mean that everything that's in here is gonna happen next year. But this is the goal, and it's just a more comprehensive look at the 5-year capital plan. We did also include in there for the water, things from the, as you see here, water department. All of this stuff was directly in the water master plan. You can also see that from the standpoint of like prioritizing things, there's a lot of activity in, say, Parks and Rec that may not have been there before. So, I mean, as much as this is a plan and it's a goal, it is a wish list as well. So putting it on here, if there are things that you would like to see, happen in the next few years, this is the time to kind of identify those things as well. And as well, when we look at, the overall funding here, we've broken it down into where certain things are coming from. So ambulance revenue, rescue plan dollars, fundraising, general fund debt, grant funded, library fund, so on and so forth. So we're breaking this down a lot in greater detail, just with the the estimate of what it's going to cost between certain funds where there's eligible, where projects can be funded with different funds. So it's a lot more comprehensive. The biggest thing I would say too is in terms of road maintenance and road reconstruction, we've broken that down. Road reconstruction would be a comprehensive rebuild, like the addition of water and sewer or storm sewer, all of that. Whereas road maintenance would be more of just paving, mill, pulverized overlay. Mike and I and Jeremy with staff met to identify some bigger projects that we would like to do, and then identifying those for grant funding in the future. So we're trying to just take a way more comprehensive look at it, identify projects that can be funded by grants in the capital plan. We will be applying for certain grants, definitely, over the next 6 months that could reprioritize this mid-year. I'm just being totally honest, with the local road improvement fund that the state passed, if we can get a grant out there to get 50% of a project covered, we're gonna try to do that, So some of the road stuff, we still have to work in GIS, we still have to work in prioritization of some of that. So we have some bigger projects on here. The two in this particular case, Douglas and St. Whatever Street, I can't say it.
Wenceslaw?
That one, Douglas has been identified because the township will be working on their portion eventually. And then St. Wenceslaus, is a priority project for the local road improvement fund, because we can work with the school, work with the college, and apply for grant funds, and it's just it needs work. There's a hole in the street. We're trying to get traffic counts there now to get a satisfactory grant application in to the state for this coming year. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. You can also then kind of see here, breaking it down, where, the 5-year, where we're spending money, where the priority kind of is, and number of projects. So, you see public works, you see police, you see utilities are going to be the major departments where you need to spend money. The utility department, based on that master plan, is the most amount of money we'll need to spend. And then it breaks it down by category, and then ultimately by funding source, and then by your specific department. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I wanted to just get this in front of you to review before we start incorporating more and more of it into the 2022 budget. On a side note, the 2022 budget is being drafted. It's being worked on. We're getting there. And this is kind of one of the main components of that, getting this information into that budget and making sure that we are funding the things that we need. obviously. There's $13 million worth to spend here. Yeah, it's a wish list. Don't get me wrong, we'll have to prioritize this over time, but this is the depth of need and that we are going to have to address over the next few years into 5, 6, 7 years. It really is at that point with infrastructure, roads, parks. We need to prioritize this stuff. So this is a tool that, that we'll be using, and yeah.
I just have a question.
Yep.
On the, I'll just call it one, because it's easy and you go year by year, the police squad car. It's 36,000 this year. 4 years later, it's still 36. I mean, realistically, like 2 years ago, that would have been, 28, and now it's 36, whatever it is, right? So by 2026, shouldn't that 36 be 45?
Generally speaking, the answer to that question is from the private sector, yes. From the public sector, they remain pretty low. We use the state, you can go online and look up Wisconsin VendorNet. You can see exactly what a squad car will cost you by a state bid, and you'd be shocked how we could outfit a truck, a squad car. So the price of those may go up over time. Like I said, these are placeholder numbers, and every year we will update it. So, we just used what Chief generally has, budgeted every year, around 36,000. The other thing is sometimes they will cost more, depending on not necessarily the vehicle, but if the model changes and they kind of hose you on the equipment inside of it. So, if you have to upgrade the whole cage and upgrade everything, you could be looking at $40,000+. But generally speaking, this is just a placeholder for the time being. And we could get more specific, but to even have it in there is a win at 36. So. The other side of this, just to be clear too, I did share with you a link. You can go to Easy View. This is on our website. And residents can go in, look, and get everything we have listed here. There's justification, there's numbers. So you can see this has all been done by staff. They've put in why they need it or kind of what the reasoning behind everything is. You can search by year, by department, by anything. So that is in public format as well out online. So if you do want to look at it in more detail, it's out there for you. And like I said, if there's anything we're missing, which we do, but just let us know and we can try to incorporate it. Yes?
When I went through my training, when I was a new council member through the League of Municipalities, I had a whole session on making sure that you look at road maintenance as a priority if you want to save money for your city, for your municipality long term. It's never something that short term people want to look at because there are other things that always rise to the occasion. So that being said, I only see 3 road maintenance projects. Is that an area where perhaps we're a little bit thin on when we know that long term that is a very smart thing to think about planning and saving us money over the long term?
So what I will say to that is we are prioritizing that all the time, and in the time we had to put this all together and everything we've discussed, we are generally light on the number of projects in road maintenance. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 7 projects on there. Mike and I talked a lot about this. What do we do with road maintenance? How do we handle it? Because there's different treatments you can do. I think Mike can speak to this too. We tried to identify in this the most utilized roads in the longest stretches to get the most bang for our buck when it comes to road maintenance of repaving and not doing full reconstructions. We identified a lot of those roads. The problem is when we get into those roads as well, there's that decision that has to be made about the utilities underneath it. And the majority of the utilities underneath the roads that we identified and wanted to put in here would need a full reconstruct. Okay? And that is going to be a lot, you're tripling the cost easily. So we're trying to prioritize this all kind of based on Jeremy and his team's records with Mike's to decide, without overwhelming you and putting 30 roads on here that need to be done. These are the priority, and it could all change based on grant funding, based on water main breaks, based on, tons of different things. So we're just trying to throw a bunch of money out there, prioritize it the best we can. And then also, I think Mike's prioritization with road maintenance treatments, where you're really talking about, putting Band-Aids on things, not road maintenance in this is like repaving it. So milling it, pulverizing it, put a new base down, and paving it. When we're talking about like road maintenance of, chip seals, slurry seals, crack filling, all of that, Mike was doing some of that. We're gonna prioritize more on crack filling next year than all those other seals, because, and we've talked about this a lot, because Mike's in his proposed budget, either, did he do double crack sealing? Because that's the first, crack filling is the first
We have to
step.
save those roads.
Yep, and crack filling is first. By the time you get to slurry seals, chip seals, you should be in there at a chip or slurry seal within about 5 years of paving a new road. We can't do that at this point, because we just repaved it, pulverized it, relayed it. To go back and pave and do that. So this is a very complex thing that we've talked about quite a bit. So we put in here the 7 biggest bang for our buck roads that we're gonna look at: TIF funding, grant funding, CDBG funding in the future, and creatively fund these things, because they're higher traffic, they're higher impact, and if we don't have the funds or we don't get the grant, we have to pivot. And so, yeah, it's a long explanation, I'm sorry.
No, thank you for that explanation, and it's good to know, obviously, I didn't doubt that those conversations were happening. I don't doubt why these rose to the top here. My only point was, the quote-unquote experts at the state level had said, make sure that make sure that this is a way that you could save money more long-term. And so it sounds like you're thinking about that. Perhaps based on your answer, it means that it should be a future discussion item, because there's a lot there, but I feel satisfied right now.
Yeah, the crack filling thing is the first step, and we weren't doing enough, and we are going to do a significant amount of more of that next year. So, and that's good, so. I'm sorry.
Any other questions or discussion on capital improvement plan? Agree.
If you are passionate about anything and want anything to be added to this, please either speak up or let me know. But I've tried to be as comprehensive as we can. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, moving on to COVID-19 vaccination policy for our employees. This would be a policy directed strictly at the city employees. As you all have most likely seen on a national level, President has called on OSHA to enforce any companies or employers with 100 employees to be vaccinated or require vaccination. We fall below that 100-person level, so this would be strictly on our own terms. Is there anyone that wants to start discussion on this? Paige?
Do we have funding, or is there funding provided for testing, for if that's an option to be unvaccinated and tested weekly or whatever? Is that something that we have the means to do?
So here, there's 2 things with that. The county, starting, I believe, Tuesday, September 21st, will be holding free COVID test mobile sites in Rosendale and in Fond du Lac. And that will go on until further notice with no end date in sight. So, and those are Tuesdays and Thursdays. So starting Tuesday, September 21st, on Tuesdays from noon to 5 and Thursdays noon to 5, in Rosendale, there's free testing. Additionally, our EMS is capable of administering and getting COVID tests.
Okay.
They are doing it currently, helping out the school, doing the same exact thing. So there are those options out there. That would be low cost, if none.
And if somebody were to utilize those mobile, the Tuesday, Thursday, we'd have to, would that fall under, that's within office hours? So is that you're required weekly to use your PTO to do that, or how?
That's up to the.
Yeah.
There are example policies that some say it's your responsibility to provide a negative test by this time at your cost, under wherever you want it from. There's other ones that say, we will provide it, you also have the option. And most of them are not saying that they are paying you to, most policies I've seen they're not paying you, so it's on your own time.
Okay.
But they can take sick time to go do it. So.
And do we know the current percentage of vaccinated city employees?
We do not know the current percentage.
Okay,
We have a guess, but it's a guess.
okay.
Oh.
I have significant reservations regarding creating a vaccination policy and those things in the city. The federal government can do what they want, but, and that's going to be challenged significantly. I don't think we are in a position to do this with our 59 employees at this time. People have the choice to be vaccinated or not. We are wearing masks, all those different types of things. Quite frankly, this is going to be challenged in a court of law anytime that you are, and not to mention the burden on someone here at City Hall to not only track all of this, but if you have a weekly testing requirement, you have to record those tests. You didn't get tested this week, now what's going to happen? Personally, this council person does not have an appetite for moving this forward, and I would ask my colleagues the same. Is there an appetite to move this forward, or do we simply monitor the situation as we have and continue to do what we do to keep everybody safe? Excuse me, everybody safe and everybody healthy, not only here at City Hall, but in our community.
I will say that the only way to keep everyone safe is to get them vaccinated.
That's your opinion, Mayor. That is your opinion. Respectfully.
David?
One thing, a couple of things I did like, you're right about the testing as far as trying to do it weekly with the 59 employees. I did see something in there, more of a, give a carrot. There was one that had 80 hours of extra sick time for a vaccinated employee that's COVID. And anything, and I'm not saying to do that, but like you, I'm against mandating a vaccine. But we should do everything we can to encourage everyone to get a vaccine. So if we could come up with something to encourage our employees to get it, I think that would be the way to go. But as far as the policy, yeah, this is probably a little too early for that. I like we did well on the masking policy.
The places that I've seen that do requirements for vaccination do allow for exceptions for personal reasons, be it religious, be it medical. And so I think that there is a place, obviously I don't want to speak for all of us, but if people are listening, I think that a city wouldn't perhaps have something with, no exceptions whatsoever. I'm sure that there would be something that would be considered for an exception here, if that were to move forward. So that's always something that we could, because it's not an all or nothing is my point. There is other examples of policies. The other thing is that I think at underlying this, it seems like there is a a desire to have more encouragement, to your point of, that carrot. It's something that we could start with right now is, have we sent anything out to our city employees from a local health official stating why this is so important? I mean, I know that we can say it's been out on, media, and by this time everybody should know. But that being said, have we had any type of local messaging that can resonate with our city employees that we have put out? Even, for example, when we pass a resolution about wearing face coverings, is this then emailed out to all of our city employees so that they're aware?
Yes. I mean, any policy changes communicated throughout the organization, although for everybody. So, we haven't had a full-blown PR campaign to get vaccinated, because quite frankly, we don't even know who is. I mean, we have an idea, like I said, on top of, it's pretty well established that everybody in our organization could have been like the second in line to get this, and they have chosen not to. So, it comes down to just, we're communicating as much as we can from a policy standpoint. We're not doing any hardcore PR saying, do this, do this, do this, because that's everywhere, but we could.
Perhaps it's everywhere, and yet maybe it resonates with people that a local health official states why this is important. My point is, there's a desire here, I think, to encourage to be safe. Now, we can debate on whose opinion that is or not, but if we have a local health official, perhaps that could be one way of helping to get the message across of what we're discussing right here.
John?
I agree with Mr. Schrader that I don't want to touch this vaccination policy. It still boils down to freedom of their choice, and I think it should just be left that way.
I have a question for Lud. As from a liability standpoint, is there any risk of, say, and obviously it would have to be contact trace back, but if a citizen were to contract COVID from an unvaccinated city employee,
I think those cases are going to be coming.
Okay,
I think it's pretty safe to say, given the state of this debate, you're going to get cases on both sides.
right,
But certainly
okay,
exposure when there is again, proof is going to be the issue.
right,
The lawsuit's going to be there, but they got to prove it.
okay,
They got to prove that the exposure was a result of an unvaccinated person.
okay.
But those are going to come on both sides of this equation.
Okay.
So I don't think it's safe for any city attorney or any
Right.
district attorney or anybody to say, I know this is the direction it's going to land, but both sides of the needle are going to be out there in terms of, could have there been something done by the community one way or the other?
So, then possibly, well, medical privacy and such with everything is a hot topic, but, is it plausible to have for those who are not vaccinated to sign like a release of liability waiver with the city, something that, if that were to,
I haven't seen that yet, but that's
Okay.
an interesting question. I got to research that further.
okay.
Good question.
Our current COVID policy states that the employee is referencing they are in good health by attending work, correct? That if they're not feeling well, they're not supposed to be here,
That is generally the case, yes.
correct?
I see this as not just a sort of an ethical, moral question of, how are we taking care of our fellow humans and trying to be as safe as we can for each other, but it's also an economic question of if if we have employees that can't come to work because they're very sick, again, if we have a measure that could keep our employees working more, it's also a dollars and cents as to it makes sense for the city to make sure that our employees are able to come to work because they're healthy, because they were able to take the measures that science shows keeps them healthy. So there's also that part of it.
I just don't feel that it's, regardless of my view on vaccines and my vaccination status, I don't feel that we have, I guess, the right to determine what somebody else does with their body. I don't feel comfortable crossing that line, and I feel like,
The other side of the argument is that unvaccinated person have the right to spread the disease, whether they know it or not?
I
What
think,
about a individual that has natural immunity and doesn't get vaccinated? Are they any worse off than someone who is vaccinated? No. According to the studies that have been out there, they have the antibodies just as well as naturally, but what was injected by a vaccine. So they're at the same level. So that's something that hasn't even been discussed. If somebody has had it and has the natural immunity, they should not have to be required to get a vaccine.
and to your point, I don't, do I think it's wrong that somebody should choose to spread anything knowingly or unknowingly? If somebody's not vaccinated, they shouldn't be coughing on the produce. You know, there's right and wrong, but that's that individual's decision. Whereas I could make that decision about myself. I cannot make that decision for other people. I cannot determine what somebody else can do medically with their body. I just think it crosses a line of morals and ethics. Should they be spreading it? No. They should be staying home if they're sick, this, that, the other thing. But I don't know that 8 random people should be making the decision about somebody else's health. I think it's a completely different, it's kind of apples to oranges, in a way. I feel like it's a very, I think it opens up a really, really, really big can of worms that I don't think we can afford to have opened.
I would say that I don't think that this is something necessarily new. I don't think it is opening a can of worms in that when we look at the history of our country, you know, we mandate, for example, seatbelts are worn. You know, there are safety things. The school district currently asks for vaccination status. As a country, we decided certain vaccinations are required. Not that we would deny someone education, but the point is, again, you might show reasons. So I think that with regard to what someone right is, that's why my guess is there would not be any policy that would stand up, back to our attorney's point, that would not have exceptions, right? So to the point of forcing somebody, this is why there would be things as a country, this is why we have things in place. You have an exception, let's say it again, for medical, for religious, you know, for personal reasons. These are things we have set up. So it's not necessarily, I don't think we're setting precedents. I don't think we're opening a can of worms. It doesn't seem that we're ready to move forward, and it's not even an action item, it's a discussion item tonight. But I don't think this is something we should be afraid of. I think there's a policy that can be put in place, and there can be exceptions that are made. We have precedents for that as a society.
Any further discussion tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on. to project updates and staff reports. Anything with police department? Water. DPW?
Adam? Sure, all right. What do you want to know? Okay. So you have my report, so we are still looking for the finance manager, assistant city administrator, so hoping to get some applications in here and place that. So Daniela has been interim finance manager for a couple weeks now. She's focusing at this point solely on the budget. So we're trying to reformat some of that and building it sort of from not the ground up, but sort of. So it's taking a little time, but I hope by the end of this week we have that figured out. And hope to have a draft to you, and we'll talk about the next meeting, any other additional meetings. Like I wrote in here, storm damage, that actually bumped up a little today just from a bill, so it was just over $211,296.14 is what we will be submitting tomorrow for the Wisconsin Disaster Fund. We have yet to hear about anything from the DNR's catastrophic tree grant, catastrophic storm tree grant. That should be coming in the next couple weeks. We did apply today for an urban forestry grant. This kind of second part of that catastrophic grant for around, it actually ended up being a little bit more, just shy of $20,000. So that will be for inventory, EAB removals, and the thing that we want to eventually get to is planting some trees. So we have submitted those grants. You want bad news? I'm going to give you it. We were not awarded the Dnr Stewardship Grant last night at 8:45 in the evening. The DNR emailed me that we were not awarded funds. I have requested to them to see the scoring and to see, you know, what if anything, not that we can change anybody's mind, but it's incredibly disappointing, and I just feel like that there's a missed opportunity by the DNR to help us out. So we will pivot there, and obviously we are continuing on with the senior center project. They are designing it out. We continue to have a trailhead component of that. We can certainly scale back parts of that project to make it maybe more affordable, and still get the trail extension done as part of the project. I think that is the ultimate goal and what I am working toward with other funding opportunities, working with the county, so on and so forth. So we're going to still try to do it. It just may not be paved. It may not be as wide. It may not be as extensive as we want, but I don't know if it makes sense to call something a trailhead and not put a trail to it. It's disappointing. Like I said, we did resubmit the application. I want to know what we scored. I want to know what others scored, and I'm going to fight for it because I've gotten these grants before, and I have no idea how on earth the DNR, with short of prioritizing other projects or areas, would not have, based on past conversations, funded our project. I'm upset.
But thanks for your work and even moving forward.
We'll do something. Just pivoting. Just next. What do we do? So, that's all I have.
All right. I have no appointments today, but I do have a message. COVID cases are on the rise again in Ripon. The new infection curve started earlier than last year and is increasing faster than it did last year. If we do not do everything in our power to prevent this pandemic now, we will be in a lot of trouble very soon. Our local hospital has asked us to do everything we can. Our hospital and pretty much every other hospital in the area are nearing or are already at full capacity. As more people get sick from COVID-19, there are no hospital beds for them to go to. And this will lead to more deaths, not only from COVID-19, but also from illnesses and accidents that they cannot receive treatment for. The one and only true way out of this perpetual hell that is COVID-19 is for everyone who physically can be vaccinated to get vaccinated, and soon. The more time the virus has to mutate and evolve, the greater the chance the vaccines will not be effective. Until we get everyone vaccinated, we must all wear face masks indoors and in large groups of people. I call on all businesses to reinstitute face mask requirements for all customers, vaccinated or not. I call on all businesses to require all employees to be vaccinated against COVID-19. Now, I want to speak directly to the roughly 50% of our community that is not vaccinated. If you have a legitimate medical condition that prevents you from being vaccinated, please do everything in your power to stay healthy. Wear face coverings, avoid large gatherings, and limit your interactions. If you are less than 12 years old, wear your face masks, keep washing your hands, and practice your social distancing. Your opportunity for vaccination is coming soon, possibly as early as October or November. Until then, be careful. If you are nervous about being vaccinated or you're just afraid of needles, these vaccines have been thoroughly tested and proven safe and effective. No corners were cut in testing, and they have been possibly tested more than any other vaccine on the planet. Now, for the people that have political objections or just don't want to get vaccinated, it is your selfishness that is prolonging this pandemic. You say, I am American and I have freedoms. You can't make me do it. We are in a war against this virus and we are currently losing. During World War I and World War II, we as Americans sacrificed for the good of our country. Compared to those sacrifices, getting a couple little shots in your arm is nothing. Be patriotic. Get vaccinated. Protect our children. Get vaccinated. Protect your family. Get vaccinated. Protect yourself. Get vaccinated. If you want life to go back to normal, get vaccinated. Are you sick of being told to wear face masks? Get vaccinated. Vaccines are readily available. Go to any pharmacy and get vaccinated. I want to commend the administration of Ripon College, our community partner, for taking actions to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 on their campus. They are requiring all students, faculty, staff, and visitors to wear face masks while indoors and in vehicles. They are also requiring all students to be fully vaccinated by the 1st of October with the standard medical and religious exemptions. Those students that qualify for these exemptions must test regularly. I call on all businesses, schools, churches, and individuals to follow the example of Ripon College. If we all do our part, we will see the end of this pandemic, but we all must do our part. As always, be safe, stay healthy, and remember to be kind, considerate, and respectful to others. Are there any future agenda items or comments from council members?
I have a comment. Our taxi service locally is in trouble. We are losing drivers, which will result in loss of time for service provided. If anyone out there is interested in employing themselves with the taxi service, they can use drivers. This would be a great service to lose in our community, and the individuals that are there that have been putting in the extra hours in that are wearing thin. So if anybody is interested, please contact the taxi service, and let's keep this going strong, because I'd hate to see hours cut back because of not having enough individuals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to second that by saying, there are people that rely on our taxi service for essential everyday medical appointments, food, things like that. So I'm really glad you bring that up.
Yes, thank you. Paige.
I would just like to say a public thank you for the addition of school zone speed limit signs and patrolling of the south end of Newbury down by Barlow Park School for school drop-off and pickup. It's been noticeably observed by those of us that reside there and take our children to school. And I think it's also been quite well observed by those driving. So thank you very much for that. I know the citizens appreciate it, and the safety of our kids is always first. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved by Howard, seconded by Page. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourned at 8:30.